Hi, how you doing? We're still going strong with the daily videos. I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to keep it up for, but for now, let's just roll with it. In this video, we're going to go back in time and look to see if we can clear up any of the mystery surrounding the origins of what today we call catch wrestling. Before we do that, we have to talk about our dear friend Walter Armstrong. For those of you who are new to the channel, or simply who haven't come across him before, Walter was a wrestler and a prolific writer around the end of the 19th century. He was also a cheater, liar and a fraudster, but that's by the by. All our videos regarding him in the past have looked at his ridiculous bias towards Cumberland and Westmoreland wrestling. He's banged on about its superiority compared to Lancashire wrestling, Cornish and Devonshire wrestling, Scottish wrestling, Jiu Jitsu. In fact, if it could be compared to Cumberland and Westmoreland, it was, and it was found wanting. It's probably fair to say that Armstrong's writing and his opinions have been a major factor in influencing all of the views on wrestling since he was writing. But round about the same time as his book from the All England series was published, around 1890, 1900-ish, the Badminton Library book on fencing, boxing and wrestling was also published. 1 second. And it was Walter who wrote the section on wrestling, so in it we find more of the same opinionated evangelising on the glory of Cumberland and Westmoreland when compared to the other barbarous forms of wrestling, but we also find something else. Ernest Blair Mitchell was an English barrister who discovered a natural skill at boxing while at Oxford. As a former champion at lightweight, middleweight and heavyweight, it was him who was commissioned to write the section on boxing. But for some reason, he also wrote the introduction to Armstrong's section on wrestling. And in that, we find a much more balanced and genuinely fascinating look at wrestling. In it, he gives some real insight into the truth surrounding the claims that loose grip wrestling fought to a pin or a submission was genuinely historical, and not something that was introduced to the UK wrestling systems from Jiu Jitsu. Rather than summarise it for you, let me read a few bits directly from the book so you can draw your own conclusions. I just need to find my glasses. Oh, don't ever get old, guys. It's, sucks. Okay, here we go. Wrestling Introduction, EBM. One is confronted at the very outset of an inquiry into the art of wrestling with some difficulty as to an exact definition of the term. Several of the best modern writers on the subject, though such writers are few indeed, describe it as the art of forcing the antagonist to the ground. But inasmuch as the antagonist has already 1 or 2 feet on the ground, it becomes at once necessary to go on and explain how much of him, besides his feet, must come to the ground before he is considered to be down. You can tell this guy's a barrister, can't you? And I love the fact that he's going for some real clarity here. Is it sufficient for a hand or an arm to touch the floor, or must a knee also touch it? Or is even this not enough? One is landed at once amongst a host of different rules and authorities, some of which say that both the shoulders must come flat down before the bout is allowed to be won, while others recognise much easier modes of finishing the struggle. Then again, there is, or at least was, a whole school of wrestlers which maintains that it is not even enough for a man to be stretched at full length on his back. Even when he is in this rather hopeless position, he may, if he can, throw off his opponent and continue the struggle until one of the pair is forced to cry, "Hold enough." Now, I don't know about you, but that to me sounds like a fairly clear implication that there is, or was, a form of loose grip wrestling that didn't stop at a pin and fought to a submission, fought till one of the antagonists verbally gave in to his opponent. It's hard to get anything else from that, right? Anyway, let's go on. The next bit that we're going to talk about, assuming I can find it. Yes, he's talking about the different styles of wrestling in the country. Thirdly, there is the mode of wrestling called loose, and also designated sometimes by local names, which may probably be regarded as the commonest of all the English styles. It's also nearest to that which was practised in the prize ring, and was thus more familiar to the rank and file of sporting men than any other during all the last century. There are a good many allusions in the literature of England to this common form of the art, which has the great advantage of being fettered by few rules and yet free from any reproach of brutality. At that point, he goes on to talk a lot about the historical examples, and more about that later. But let's find the next section now. He says, the Cumberland and Westmoreland style is so fully treated later on that details need not be given here. Feels a little bit like a dig at Armstrong. Perhaps he was asked to write this introduction because Armstrong's section was so clearly biased. I guess we'll never actually know. Loose wrestling, sometimes called the catch-as-catch-can style, requires no elaborate placing of the men in position, and no special formality in catching hold. Kicking and even striking with the foot, though no shoes are worn, are usually prohibited, and it is not allowed to catch hold of the hair or clothes, or to take a grip of the skin or flesh, or to twist the arms or fingers. In many places, it's not considered down until both shoulders are forced onto the ground. But a more simple rule has been introduced in other clubs of places, of ending the round when any part of the body except the feet, knees or hands touches the ground. And this is a lovely bit that sounds very much like a lot of modern commentators on wrestling and Jiu Jitsu. Modern spectators do not much care about the recumbent style of wrestling, in which a man who is really down and underneath struggles, with very small chances of success, but with laborious and tedious efforts to keep at least one shoulder off the ground. I think it's really important to note that he clearly is less biased than Armstrong, and we've got fairly clear evidence that A, loose grip wrestling in England was old, historical and widespread, that loose grip wrestling in England is catch-as-catch-can, and that historically people did fight to a verbal submission. I mean, it's clear that he, like Armstrong, isn't a particular fan of catch-as-catch-can wrestling. But unlike Armstrong, he does mention a number of historical sources, and he discusses a little why it may be that this loose grip style fell out of favour. I'm going to look into his sources, see if I can find them and see what they actually say, and hopefully we'll be able to get another video all about it. But until then, I'd be really interested to hear what you think of what Mitchell says. Is he actually talking about submissions in historical wrestling? Or is it possible that he's got wind of Jiu Jitsu and the way submissions were carried out in that system some 10 years before Yuki Otani ever set foot on English soil? Stick something in the comments and let me know. And if you aren't subscribed already, it'd be kind of cool if you did. I'm on a mission to get to 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I realise that's quite a big ask. But, you know, we're on a pretty good run at the moment, so let's see how long we can keep it going for. And for those of you still here at the very end of the video, fight team!